just to give you a little bit of background about myself, because while I know many of you, I don't know all of you. So I started with the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation back in September and took on this role after a lot of discernment from the board of directors from GMCF and kind of their process in thinking about how do they want to measure impact. We know that we're giving out grants, but what does that really mean for our community? Are we moving the needle? And is change actually occurring? And so I came into this role to build up our infrastructure, to ensure that we have the metrics in place, we're asking the right questions, and more than anything, we're amplifying the stories of the work that you all are doing day in and day out, so that donors have a better understanding as far as what that impact looks like in our community. Prior to that, actually I'll go all the way back for you. So my formal training is as a family scientist. So I have my master's in marriage and family therapy and maintain a license that way, but have spent most of my career in either education, policy, and now philanthropy. So worked at K-State for many years as an assistant dean and director in student life. During that time, served on many boards, so I know many of you through my time. I know some of you are like, yes, we know, Sarah. Through my time as the chair of the Social Services Advisory Board. And then I've served on just various boards, including the Via Christi Hospital Board and some other community boards. After that time, I transitioned to federal work, working with the Cleary Center, doing work around the Cleary Act and working with members of Congress, and then wanted to bring my professional work back to the Midwest and started working at the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City on their research team as a senior research learning and evaluation officer. So with all of that experience, I've been on both sides. I have been on the nonprofit side, writing grants, wishing, hoping, and I've also been on the funder side, making those hard decisions and trying to decide who gets awarded and who doesn't. So my heart goes out to you every single time I see those grant applications coming in. So what are we doing here today? Our time is limited, but there's a lot to cover, but this is not the only time that we will gather together. So part of my role in coming into this new vice president position was to listen. I've had coffee with many, many of you, and if I haven't had coffee with you, please accept this as an invitation for coffee. It can be on me, and we can go on down. I feel like we need like a corporate sponsorship with Flight Crew, because I mean, half the time I'm in there meeting with someone, and then I see the other half of you in there as well. But really, as part of that listening, I have heard the good, I've heard the bad, not too much ugly, but I am open to all of it, because really my position is to work in partnership with you all. And if there are opportunities for growth or for change, it's really difficult to execute those if we don't know. And so as part of that listening tour, we heard from you all that you didn't even tell us what you wanted to learn for the Lunch and Learns. And it would be really helpful if you got to decide what we were talking about during these times together. And so that's part of the reason why we sent out a survey asking for the different types of topics that you all would like to hear. And overwhelmingly, the response was grants. We want to talk about grants, how to get grants. We want to talk about funding. So that's why we started with this one. And for today, we're talking about funding and our new final report. Because in the same way you receive an award, we also have kind of that second half in talking about what you did with that award and the impact that you made. So as far as our time together here, we'll go through some of our GMCF kind of grant programs. We'll talk about other funding sources, and then we'll also talk through outputs and inputs. Like, what are we doing here, and how do we prepare ourselves to start actually reporting out on the new final report? Then we'll start talking about just documenting your outcomes and leave a little bit of time for questions. Now this, like I said, is not our only time together. I'm literally right down the street, happy to continue this conversation. If we find at the end of this, it might be helpful to have a part 2, we can also have that discussion as well. But today we're going to do a pretty big overview and then kind of narrow it down. Because for some folks, they might be new to our community, they might be new to the nonprofit world, they might just be new to granting. And so we are going to start from a common ground, a common language, so we can all move together forward. Apply today. I'm quite sure many of us have seen this, whether it's applying for a job, applying for a grant, we've all seen this. What are some other different ways you see grants advertised? What are some other language or different acronyms or jargon that you see associated with grant? Yes, an LOI. Okay, I think it's here somewhere. Oh no, I'm forwarding myself. What else? What else? It's like it's here on the screen. RFP. What does an RFP stand for? Request for proposal. Notice of funding availability. Anything else? Funding opportunity announcement. Sometimes it might just be a relationship or a referral that you learn of a grant. But it's important to know the different language that we use in this world, because you might see something come across your LinkedIn or in a listserv and it says RFP. But if you've never seen RFP before, you don't know that they're requesting proposals like you. So having that understanding as far as what type of language might be used with granting and then what that granting process looks like is often helpful. So there are various different types of grants. And once again, because our time here is limited, I'm not going to go through all of them, but these generally give you some guidelines as far as what you might be seeing. So international or global grants, oftentimes around humanitarian work or spanning different continents. Government grants, many of you are familiar with that. Your budgets are very familiar with governmental grants, so often larger, either coming in through the federal level, local, or state. And then corporate grants. Many corporate organizations are getting into social responsibility. And so they might create a nonprofit or a foundation in addition to their for-profit work, or they might just do social responsibility granting through their corporation. You might also see specialized granting. So as a researcher working at K-State, often did research grants. There might be an individual granting or personal grant. So as we think about a community foundation or wealth management, you might hear the term DAF coming out, or a donor advised fund, and then also foundations. So we see that oftentimes in the form of a private foundation or a community foundation. But like I said, there can also be corporate foundations as well. As we think about a community foundation, we have Greater Manhattan Community Foundation here, and really we see ourselves as the nonprofit for all nonprofits here, right? So we are endeavoring to really kind of match up a donor's intent, their charitable desire, their desire to make a difference or to fund a passion with the good work that you're doing day in and day out. So by us creating that bridge between the work that you're doing, we are able to ensure that that connection and alignment is maintained throughout the community. So we know that every community has its needs, right? What would you say are some of the needs of our community? Affordable housing. What else?
Access to healthcare.
Access to healthcare. Transportation, after-school programming, right? And so we know because those needs exist and they evolve over time, many of our nonprofits were created to respond to those needs. And so with our nonprofits, thankfully doing thoughtful service work, gifts that are made through GMCF can be distributed or allocated through the granting process. So sometimes a donor might contribute cash, they can contribute real estate, they can contribute grain. Don't know if people knew that, the gift of grain, that's a thing. Ag state, right? And people can also contribute their retirement assets. Right now, we are encouraging folks to contribute parts of their estate. So for many individuals within the state, they may not have someone within their family or in their network to bequest their estate to. Or they may, but they may also have a compelling desire to give back to the community. And in doing that, they can allocate parts of their estate to the foundation. So we're encouraging 5. There's a national, or not national, there's a statewide campaign right now, Keep 5 in Kansas. So if you see that either on our website or in other communications, that's what we're encouraging. We're encouraging folks to contribute 5% of their estate to come back to our community, to meet the community needs. In doing that, we receive all those funds in different ways and put them together and create granting programs. So we'll talk about those in a little bit, but oftentimes you'll see either GMCF granting programs or supporting organizations. There is a difference there, and we'll get into what that really means. And then ultimately, the hope of the Community Foundation is to build capacity. So many of you contribute and participate in Grow Green Day. And what did you need to do for Grow Green Day? Create an agency fund and an endowment. So that endowment is really designed to ensure that you're on the trajectory for long-term sustainability, because ultimately that's what we want. We want to ensure that you have the flexibility and the funds and the resources to continue to do the work that you do, with the hopes of, for many of you, to get to a point where you no longer have to do that work, right? So as you think about the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, there are various different grants that we have. So that is part of our handout. So if you picked up one of those, if you didn't, that's fine. We can pass them on along, but you'll see that there are 2 sides to this. So on one side, we have our GMCF programs, and then on the other side, we have our supporting organizations. So for the GMCF administered grant programs, it's an open application, and it's managed directly through our internal process. So many of our grant programs actually have committees that make those decisions. So when you turn in a grant application, we have a select committee that's reading that grant application. They might be reaching out to you to ask questions. They might be visiting you. Every grant program is a little different, but we have volunteers from around our community that get together and make those decisions on granting. So for our GMCF granting programs, the most probably widely advertised and most known is our Grants for Greater Manhattan. Grants for Greater Manhattan is really probably our most broad program. It touches on all types of different things: basic human needs, children, activities, different things, leadership, education, beautification. You can see the list there. For these grants, we're looking at proposals that are seeking funding for $10,000 and below, okay? As we move to some of our other programs, you'll see that it kind of swaps. So Lincoln and Dorothy Deal left part of their estate, they had a bequest, and created an endowment. As part of that endowment, now we have 2 separate funds called the Deal Fund. So we have Deal Community, and we have Deal Arts and Humanities. So for these funds, we're looking at proposals that are $10,000 or more. And those are specific to the different areas in line with the donor intent. So Lincoln and Dorothy had a heart for the arts, they had a heart for the humanities, and so they wanted certain funds to go directly to those initiatives. But they also said, we want to ensure that the community has the resources necessary to continue to thrive. And so there's the community fund as well. So for both of the deals, they are operating on a quarterly basis. So quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. Separate from the Grants for Greater Manhattan, that's a one-time shot, January. So remember that as we get into the fall, once again, you'll see information from Jana coming out, you'll see information from Tyler and Felix. We try and get that information out to you on a regular basis so that you have a little bit of time to plan. But for Grants for Greater Manhattan, once a year. Start of the year. Start the year off on the right foot. Deal is happening throughout the year. Then we also have the Yes Fund. So the Yes Fund is a specific granting program for after-school programs for youth. So it's not open for everything. If you have an after-school grant, if you have an after-school program, that's a grant you definitely want to keep on the radar. That granting program is slightly different from our other one. So in addition to how people can, contribute to, the foundation through grain or assets or different things, folks can directly give to the Yes Fund during the summer. So as of mid-July, July 12th, we are going to open up the Yes Fund campaign. So if you still get the paper, or if you look at it online, we take out an ad every single week that actually highlights one of our Yes Fund recipients. So one of the grantees that received funding the year before, but we also like to highlight the folks that are contributing to the initiative. So folks can write a check and they can send that in directly and it goes straight into the Yes Fund. So whatever we raise that year goes towards that. So it can vary year by year, but essentially anyone that is doing an after-school program can apply directly for the Yes Fund. So that'll run from July through September, and then that will be granted out shortly after. So that's also once a year. Then we have our supporting organizations. Who's heard that term before, supporting organizations? Right? You can raise them high. We need to, okay. Yeah, that's not everyone, right? That's not everyone. And so because of that, I really want to focus on that distinction, because we have our GMCF grant programs here, but we also support other programs listed here. So you can see these different supporting organizations. Oftentimes, these are either family foundations or another foundation or board that is separate from GMCF. They operate under the GMCF umbrella, but they are separate entities. So they have their own boards, they have their own bylaws, and they have their own rules for how they operate. And in doing that, they can make decisions about how they choose to grant. For many of these, they grant through a closed application process. So it's not open. You're not going to see it when you scroll through on our website more often than not. For many of them, and you'll see which ones specifically on the sheet, many of them have applications that are brought directly to their board by their board members. Some of you have received funding through some of these supporting organizations. Whether or not you had an application, whether you were asked to come in, whether you gave a presentation, it varies by the boards. The boards make those decisions as to who they would like to speak with more and who they would like to award funding for. We facilitate that process for them. We are part of some of those conversations, but those boards are separate. Who here did not know that information prior to this conversation? Okay. And that's also part of why we're doing these lunch and learns this year with the information from you all, your input, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And it's really hard to, make decisions about where funding is going to come from and who you need to apply for or who you need to connect with or where you're going to apply for something if you don't know the mechanisms in which they operate. So we have this new updated form that's right there. We hope to have it on our website soon. We're going through a bit of a website refresh right now, but our intention is really to make this information really transparent, really clear for you. So we know that questions come up and we welcome those questions, but if there's additional information that would be helpful for you to know at the onset, please let us know, because we want to get that information to you so that you can make informed decisions about where you might find funding. So if you have any questions about these different areas, even with some of the focus areas being lined out, feel free to reach out. If you have an idea, if you have a proposal, and you are like, I'm not sure where this really fits, should I even apply? Feel free to give me a call. We can have a discussion about it. So as we think about funding, while GMCF would love to be the end-all be-all and meet everybody's needs, we know that it can't right now. And so because of that, we want to facilitate any different connections or provide resources for you to get more opportunities for that funding. So GMCF currently has subscriptions for different databases and websites. Now, because they are subscription-based and we're paying for those, they are connected to our IP address. We are open 5 days a week. At any given time, if you feel like you would like to come in and search one of those databases and find some grants, you are welcome to come in, okay? Just go ahead, reach out to me, we'll schedule some time and we'll get you set up. Because they exist. There are granting opportunities out there, and because of the subscription base, we know that that can be a barrier. But our goal is to help decrease those barriers for you, so you will have access for that. We also have different information related to like a foundation directory or Candid. Often folks might choose to have a Candid subscription just to look up other nonprofits or to get information. Sometimes you submit that information. So that's also an option. Sometimes it might just be a listserv or a newsletter that you're part of. You'll see, once again, Jana sending out that information. If you're not currently on our listserv, let us know. We'll get you connected to that, because not only do we share information about our GMCF funding, but we also share about funding outside of the organization. And then also just thinking about national funders. There are national funders out there. There are philanthropic organizations that provide funding and resources for organizations across the nation. So if you have questions, you have a specific idea, you feel like you want to get connected to one of those organizations, let's have a conversation. Then we have local foundations. There are thousands of foundations in Kansas alone. So having an idea as far as which ones might fit some of your focus areas, which ones might be interested in maybe a pilot or a new proposal or a project, there are a lot of foundations out there. It's just a matter of figuring out what that alignment is and then essentially applying and claiming some of that money. But once again, if you're unsure of where to start, where to go, what you're looking for, let me know. We can have a conversation and brainstorm together. Here are just a couple examples of some of the opportunities. So we often send out information like this that might be in a listserv through the Kansas Department of Commerce, the grants.gov. This is an example here through T-Mobile, one of those corporate foundations. So they're doing hometown grants, right? They want to make a connection with their clients, and they're doing that through charitable giving. Even FedEx, I was just searching the other day randomly and came upon a FedEx grant up to $30,000. Once again, your program or your work may not necessarily fit for every single one of these, but we can explore which ones might be a good fit. So as we think about granting generally, once again, I know some of you, veterans, been there, done that, but we know that not everybody is at the same place. So this is just a snapshot in thinking about general granting timelines. So oftentimes you'll see the grant open, you'll see that language, RFP, call for proposals. The application is then open, an announcement, an invitation. Then there's a timeline, but like all good things, the application timeline ends and there's a deadline. I know you've heard it 1,000 times, but I'll say it again. Don't wait until the last minute. It never fails. It's a Friday afternoon. It's going into a weekend. It's 4:50, and I get the phone call. And it's like, Sarah, my computer went out. I don't know, lightning struck. Something happened. I lost my entire application. My heart sinks, right? I don't want that to be your reality. You don't want that to be your reality. I always encourage you, start the application in a Word document, separate. That is saving automatically every time you save a word. And then put that into the application. But do that with enough time before the application deadline, just in case something happens. But we know we're human, and computers are computers, And things happen. So if something happens, feel free to call me. Sometimes we just need to troubleshoot, figure something out. Something's happening on the back end. The hard part is after the application deadline has closed, if you give me a call. Because there might be 80 other organizations that have already applied and made that deadline. So don't call me after, call me before, we'll figure it out. Then there's a review process that takes place. So it might be a committee, it might be staff, it might be volunteers or paid board members, whatever that looks like. There's a review process. And there's a discernment process. In the same way that you're making decisions about which funding works for you or which programming you do, the work that you do day in and day out, there's a discernment process that goes into reviewing applications. Oftentimes, there's more need than funding. And so these individuals have to make decisions about who gets awarded and how much. It's a hard decision. And so in doing that, sometimes they might use a scoring system, they might use different metrics, they might, like I said, come out and visit with you or ask questions, and then a decision occurs. It might be for full or partial awarding, or there might be a rejection. Rejection is not necessarily a reflection of your work. It's not a reflection of the time and the energy and the effort that you put into that application. It was a reflection of the snapshot in time, right? So just because you've received a rejection doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply again, unless they say, don't apply again. Oftentimes they don't say that. So if you receive a rejection, let's have a conversation, right? And if it's not through GMCF, reach out and see if they're willing to have a conversation, if they're willing to give you feedback, because it might just be changing something. Something wasn't clear, and they decided to go with someone that was a little bit more clear or a little bit more specific. Then oftentimes there's a notification. So in my case, I get to send you an email, hopefully send you a contract, and say, would you like to accept this money? And then usually I get a response that says yes. And we'll send out letters, we'll send out contracts. Those contracts are signed. And then once again, who does it? Who's back there? Sally. Sally is sending out those grants. She's sending out the checks and I'm signing them. And then she's making deposits and you get your award. But after the award, we know that there's another step, right? That reporting. How do we understand what happened and the impact that you're making? Another good thing to keep in mind is, whether that's through GMCF or another funding opportunity, oftentimes your reporting out, your final report, your progress reporting, is building a rapport that might lead to consideration for future funding. I did a presentation last night on grants, and the organization indicated that they didn't know it at the time, but they were a pilot program. They received an award, and it actually led to a 10-year award. But because of their reporting and what they did, building that relationship, they were able to maintain that funding and secure it for future funding. So grant reporting. As we think about it generally, we are looking at expectations and demonstrating impact, right? So why does this matter? Reporting is how funders ensure that you are utilizing your resources effectively. We have faith in you that you're going to be good stewards of the funds that you receive. That's why we're going into contract with you. But oftentimes, we are going into contract with you. That is also a compliance element as well. So did you use the funds in the way that you said you were going to? It's an opportunity also to share the impact. What did you do? How did you move the needle? What was the change that occurred? So funders might expect a progress report. So you might be speaking to your goals, objectives, what you achieved, or they might be asking for financial reporting. Sometimes for some funders, they might actually expect you to share receipts or to share invoices. For us, we ask you to share just in words what you spent your money on, and then also speaking to the outcomes and the impact. Best practices. Be transparent. In the same way that we know things happen with applications, things happen when we're doing this work, right? Sometimes we have to pivot. Sometimes things go wrong. Always, always err on the side of being transparent, letting the funder know. If you need to pivot, something changed, let us know. Don't let the funder know, or don't let the funder find out and then let you know that they know, right? So let us know and be timely. Once again, with deadlines, whether that's reporting, whether that's getting your contract back, whatever that looks like, please be timely. And then consider utilizing data. So whether that's qualitative, so whether you are telling stories, whether that's quantitative, if you are using numbers and data, consider that as you think to speak to the evidence of the change that you're doing.
Sarah, real quick.
Sure.
How often does reporting, the report go into their decision on the next year's task? If we blew it on the report, would that affect possibly the next year's fund?
Well, I think blew it on the report is a little subjective, but what that looks like is, yeah. So essentially, the reporting is, once again, it's a compliance element, but it's also a way for folks to take into consideration, hey, do we want to fund them again? So that's why for Grants for Greater Manhattan, some of our other programs, they require that final report before you apply again. Because they want to know, were you good stewards? Did you use the funds the way that you said that you were going to? And it's an opportunity for additional dialogue. If you didn't, if something went wrong, but if you're going to do that application again, they probably would like to see something different moving forward if it didn't go well. So it's not fully contingent on, if things didn't go well, that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, we're out of the running. We're not going to get the award again. It really is just more context, more information for them to consider. Because if you think about it, for a lot of these applications, there isn't an interview. There isn't a follow-up. You have what's in front of you and the information that you're sharing. And so that's just another data point for them to make an informed decision. So as we think about outputs and impact, there's a difference there. So outputs, we're looking at what it shows, what you did, right? What is it that you did? The impact is the difference you made. Then if we think about like trainings, the number of people that you reached, the tools that you were distributed, but the impact might be the knowledge that was improved, the practices that were changed by the work that you were doing. Maybe it's their livelihood was improved. How are you actually measuring the impact of the work? Sometimes you might track that for an output through attendance, through totals, through numbers. So on our report, sometimes you might see individual served or family served, unique numbers. But the impact, once again, might be a survey. So speaking to that knowledge or observing something over time, some of the stories that you get from the clients that you're serving. And then outputs, and this is kind of relative, sometimes can be easier to count or more easy to report, but impact is harder to capture, right? But when you're telling your compelling story, how do you reflect on it to share, was it worth the effort? Was it worth it? And then at the bottom line, it's necessary, right? We know that funding is more tenuous than ever at the federal level, at the state level. And so more now than ever, I believe, it's so important to tell your story in a compelling way, in a clear and a concise way. And oftentimes you'll find that by sharing your impact and not just your outputs. So really the core idea here is numbers tell what happened, but impact is telling what changed. So it's not just listing out what you did. We don't just want to see a whole long list of what you did. It's really naming what changed because of it. How was our community better because of it? How was this individual, this family better because of the work you did? So we're taking that information into account as we are unrolling or unveiling this new final report. So what we've updated here, So this helps our GMCF board, this helps our supporting organizations, this helps our donors who are giving 5% of their estate, who are giving gifts of grain, better understand the impact that you are having in our community. And it's a chance to capture those lessons. What are we learning from the work that we're doing day in and day out? How have things changed year after year, decade over decade? So what are we changing? So we are asking you to speak to your goals. You had goals when you submitted that application, when you thought of that program, when you submitted that proposal. What were they? This is an opportunity to reflect on those goals and to share the evidence in an honest way. It's also an opportunity to speak to the story of change. As we continue to encourage folks to leave parts of their estate, to leave parts of their retirement assets, we want to share the story. We want to amplify the work that you're doing. But also we want to learn and reflect. Not only for you individually, not only for us with our granting programs, but for us collectively. So the good to know thing is observations count, right? We know not everybody is taking in data day in and day out. We recognize that. We're all starting from different places. Observations will count. You don't always need a formal evaluation, but honest reflection matters. And that's more than a perfect success story. And then we'll talk through this live right now. And I'll also be holding some office hours in the next few months in case you have specific questions. So right now, if you go to our website, you go to our grants tab, you go under the grants tab, there's a drop down. There's the apply for a grant drop down. So in this tab, many of you are familiar with it because that's how you find the application. So you go here, and what used to be a final report that was a PDF that you filled out and then you sent it back to us. I know. It's okay. We're getting with the tech. Now it is a fillable form right there in the website. So you're going to click here, and this once again will be changing. We are going to be doing a refresh. So look for that in the coming months. But right now, this is where you're going to find it. And once you get in there, you'll see the final report right in there in the same way that you do the grant application. So you don't have to download anything, fill it out, send it back in. You just submit it here. Would I encourage you maybe to use a Word document and start it and work on it and then submit it? Yes. But the form is right there. So that makes it hopefully easier for you and definitely easier for us, because then I can pull that information from the back end. So here you can see just different areas you're just speaking through. Sometimes you're clicking. You can see the different grant programs listed out. And then, oh, that was supposed to disappear. So sorry for kind of squeezing in here. But you'll see this is an example of one of the goals. So you're speaking to your goals, what you intended for your program or project, and then you're actually going to be sharing the basis for why you believe that. So did you track it with surveys? Did you observe it? Did folks tell you directly? Did you believe that, but maybe you didn't necessarily track it? This helps give us an idea of the mechanisms that you are utilizing to determine your impact. So there is no wrong answer. Hopefully we gave you enough options to choose from, but if you find sometime that there isn't an option that you need, let me know. But hopefully this gives us a better snapshot of what impact looks like across our community. So as we're documenting those outcomes, so did you track it with data, surveys, assessments, pre and post measurements, or records? Did you observe it? Was this staff observation, attendance patterns, how people showed up, behavior changes, or did participants tell you directly? Or is it something you believe is happening? Maybe you're not collecting the data in the surveys right now. Is this based on your experience, even without the formal tracking? Because really, honestly, uncertainty counts too, right? We're all in this together. We're all learning together. This is something that's new for all of us, for GMCF and for you all. So we don't want you to put on airs. We don't want you to just put information in here because you think that's what we want to hear and see. That's not helpful for any of us. So we can all be honest. We'll figure out where we're starting, and then we'll go from there as we continue to learn together. So ultimately, GMCF is for the community, right? So your partnership extends beyond just the grant, beyond just the final report, right? We want this to be a true partnership of community. And we want you to see you thrive for many years to come. If you're not sure where to start, I hope that has been clear. Please reach out to me. It's not just because I'm lonely and I need new friends. I really want this to be a partnership. My cards are right there. Feel free to take one. Shoot me an email. And we don't just want to fund the work, right? We want to actually strengthen the connection between our donors who are, and many of you are donors. That's the amazing part about this community, right? Many of you are doing the work, but you're also donating to the work that is happening. So you have a part in this work, right? So the hard-earned cash that you all are making and contributing, you want to make sure that there's impact behind it as well, right? And then also, don't change who you are just for new funding, right? I've been on the funder side, and I've heard people reach out to me to say, now, what do you really want? What are you really looking for? Because we need this award. I don't want to play games, right? That's not what we're looking for. We don't want you to change your work or what you do or who you are for funding. It's about finding that alignment so we can make that connection. So you can do what you do and we do what we do, right? So that's for not just for GMCF, that's across the board with all funding. Partner where it makes sense. We love to see partnership. And then make strategic decisions that make sense for your organization, right? So that was a lot of information and a little bit of time. And so we can go through some questions. But remember, this is not our only Lunch and Learn. Jana will be sending out information for my office hour, so it will be virtual. You don't have to come in person. You can just log on. We do ask you to actually indicate that you're coming. So I'm not just sitting there on Zoom hoping and waiting. But you can pop in, pop out. The live form is there. It's on the website. I will also send you a personal email if you receive funding in 2025 because I need a final report from you, right? But if you want to go on there now, click it, look around. If you have questions, let me know. I'll have my office hours. I'm always available. Jeremy knows. He's like, hey, you want to chat? Yeah. If you have questions, let me know. We're learning together, right? I didn't even know that question about, will it let you save? It won't. So we're learning together. If there are bugs, if that question doesn't make sense, let me know. But I also want you to let me know what you did in 2025. So that's all I have. Are there any questions after hearing this information?